All right, another week with the organic mechanic from Kelp4less.com and the undisputed hydro weight champion of the world, Harley Smith. We're going to have some fun discussions today. We, off camera, we were talking about some issues some of our customers were having, and Harley had a great term for the solution. He called it hidden hunger. Hidden hunger in plants. What's hidden hunger? I've never heard of that, and you said it so well. That's a good way to play it. But before we dive deep into that, I just have a quick story to tell. Um,
Hmm.
it's very, very interesting. So we're getting late in the year in some of our agriculture customers, and we have a lot of grain farmers, barley and wheat and rye and, just corn and so on and so forth. And this time of year, this doesn't happen often, but we've had a terrible locust infestation across our valley. And it's affected a lot of the plants and a lot of the fields. And you can't imagine the crop dusters that are going out and spraying for these locusts, the grasshoppers, whatever you want to call them, on a daily basis. It's that bad because we're so late in the year. Our kernels are filled, and we're getting very close to harvest. And people are trying to you know control the pest pressure using insecticides, of course. But this is so interesting. So in the middle of this huge agriculture area is a field that his seed, he's growing ancient grains for a customer in Korea. Ancient grains. So it's a very unique variety, very hard to get the seed for this, but he has a customer overseas that wants to buy it. Anyway, he found the seed, planted the seed, and this field's in the middle of all these other grains. Not one locust infestation, not one crop damage. They're staying away from this field. And so, of course, we went out, tested the bricks, all this stuff. The bricks really isn't that high. We were expecting it to be really high bricks because we've learned that high bricks can really, really make it hard for insect pressure to digest what they eat in the plant because the sugar's so high. But this field's not very high bricks. And anyway, we started talking with my brother and looking at things. And what it comes down to, what we figured is genetically, where this is an ancient grain, it has not been bred, doesn't have, different variety strains bred into it, and by itself is resistant to the locust infestation. That's the only thing we can come up with. Harley, what's going on?
Oh yeah, I, like we were talking earlier. We as farmers, we as growers, we are selecting for the genetics that are most important to us. And of course, in grain over the years, with more and more hybridization, we're getting more and more protein production and better yields. So we're selecting for that, but we're not necessarily, maybe not even, I mean, just ignorantly, uh, breeding out some of the natural resistance to pest and disease because that's not something we're selecting for. So there could be in some of the more ancient ones, the ones that were selected by nature over the millennium for disease resistance, like locusts, so that they can spread their seeds to the next generation. The ones that are the most resistant are the ones that are going to survive. And the ones that survive, the grain that survives, that's going to be the seed for the next generation. So you get the idea of good old, you know, 101, survival of the fittest, but under what conditions? So yeah, I think that what's happening is, and we're breeding out some of the medicinal or some of the resistance or some of the immune responses of the plant in preference of some of the other characteristics. I told you this before, I think, but lettuce used to be a medicinal herb. It was on the chart, medicinal herbs. But over the years, we wanted it sweeter and sweeter. We'll get all that bitter component out. Now it's just a plant. You put salad dressing on to hold the salad dressing, where it used to actually have medicinal compounds. But well, I do want to say one thing though. It's kind of interesting here. Is one of my gardens years ago, I was starting some basil for growing outdoors in hydroponics. I love to have my herb garden. I just started some basil in the spring, a little bit too early for the back porch, and we went through a cold spell, and almost all of it died. Just okay. Well, so what? It's just we're just started it out. I can have more basil in a week, in 2 weeks. But just a few of the plants, maybe a third of the plants or less, survived the cold snap. I said, well, those are still okay. I put them in their own little hydroponic system, and I started fresh, some new seeds under the right conditions. The later that season, we had uh, an infestation of what are they called? They're the Japanese beetles. You know what those
Oh
are,
yeah,
right?
oh yeah,
Japanese
absolutely.
beetles. Just like you were saying, they come in like locusts. And I was out there in the garden. I'm like picking them off the plants. I'm fighting them, just tooth and nail. And then the more I fought them, the more came in. So I'm going to lose this battle. But here's the funny part. The good plants, the ones I started over, they were fresh and growing really well. They were being infested. My little garden right next to it. I mean, literally right next to it, that had the plants that survived the cold snap. Not even one of the Japanese beetles. They weren't even
Hmm.
landing on it. So I said, huh, that's interesting. The swarm's coming in and they're not touching it. And I think what happened is that cold snap stimulated an immune response in the plant to make secondary metabolites, some phytoalexins, to survive the cold, triggered the immune system. So later on, when the Japanese beetles came, they were already primed with their immune system response. So they didn't land on them. They went next door. So there, I said, "Oh, okay, that's something." But what do I take from this? Almost kill your plants, and there'll be more. No, that's not a good plan. you know. But it is interesting to see that if you trigger the immune system at some point, then they will have more resistance, obviously. And those are rasping insects. Those aren't the sucking insects. Sucking insects, you raise your bricks, like you said, they're not even going to land on the plant. So most of my other crops never had an aphid, never had sucking insect problems. But the rasping insects, like a grasshopper or a Japanese beetle, the bricks doesn't matter much to them. They're just tearing the tissue and eating it. So yeah, that's
So
my thought.
what what I'm hearing from you, genetics really matter, and they
Mm-hmm.
really matter. And uh, like you said, we get our genetics to focus on higher yields or higher specific compounds, or different colors or whatever. But boy, when we do that, we're like playing genetic roulette. I mean, we spin that, roulette wheel has all these genes on it, and we start suppressing some of these genes and expressing some of these other genes, and who knows what we're going to get. But yeah, this is a very interesting topic, genetic roulette.
Yeah, and it works on the other side too with the insects. You spray pesticides. You know this. you, you spray pesticides. Some of them have a natural resistance. They're going to survive, and
Yeah,
they're the ones that are going to lay the eggs. And then you spray again the next time, and you kill a bunch of them, but some of them make it and they lay the eggs. So over a course of some generations, and with insects, you can have multiple generations in one growing season.
yeah,
So over
yep,
time, you're literally breeding insects that are resistant to that pesticide. So what do? We invent a new pesticide. And then the same thing happens again. So we're just, our best minds are in there trying to create new poisons to spray on our plants. because the other ones stop working.
Yeah.
If we, on the other side, if we were able to learn from nature, like what you just said, with find those resistance genes and make sure that those are present in the future generations of our plants, if we can improve their natural resistance through the use of biostimulants and other things in healthy soil, good nutrition, then we'll get fewer and fewer and fewer insects over time because we're getting stronger and stronger plants over time.
Yeah. Very well said. Very well said. So this kind of ties into our last couple podcasts on IPM. So this is another avenue of integrated pest management. Um, the varieties and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But just very interesting. Boy, that's a great topic. But let's go back to what we originally talked about. Is um, we filled quite a few calls here at Kelp4less. Our crew, myself personally, we have a very knowledgeable staff, and the phone rings constantly with some of our customers, and they're asking questions and they need help. And that's one thing we're very proud of here at Kelp4less is if you call our office, we will talk to you. If it goes to our voicemail, leave a message. We'll call you back because we don't have a large staff, so sometimes we get overwhelmed and we get busy. But leave us a message. We will call you back. We want to field those calls for you. We're a great resource of information. But right now, we've been fielding a lot of calls of customers that have said, you know what, my plants have quit using water. They're just stagnant. They're not doing anything. They're just kind of hanging out. They're not producing any more flowers or any more leaves. And we, check the moisture, and it's just the moisture's there. Nothing's happening. They're not using the water. And one particular discussion we had with the customer that had this problem, after just some investigative, questions and things like that, he was growing in a 100% potting soil mix, just a bagged potting soil mix without any amendments, without any, nutrients, you know, anything mixed in it. And we asked him, well, when was the last time you dosed with any nutrient regimen? What's your nutrient regimen? And he said, oh, I quit that 2 weeks ago. The plants were doing so good. I didn't want to, hurt them. They're doing so good. I just stopped with my nutrient regimen. And we're like, well, it's probably pretty easy. They're probably starving. And so we worked with them on some dosing rates, a low water, high nutrient dosing rate to kind of get those plants to, start doing what they're supposed to do, grow and produce and things like that. And within a couple days, he called back and said, wow, yeah, my plants are doing great. They're growing again. They're using water. And we said, just stick to that regimen. And I was explaining this to you off camera, and you had some great terms for it. And of course, you're the master. You know all about this. Let them know your thoughts, Arlie.
Okay. Well, yeah. It's what I call it is a hidden hunger. Now remember, there's some nutrients that are relatively immobile in the soil. So the roots are actively growing. Okay, they're mining the nutrients. Everything's going great. But then they start to slow down a little bit, and a nutrient such as potassium, that's the one I focus in on the most. I mean, it could be any of them. Whatever is the limiting factor can affect it. But to me, the number one is potassium because they take up the potassium that's used for carbohydrate metabolism, both in photosynthesis to make the sugars and to unlock the stored sugars that are in the roots and transport them to the flowers, store them in the fruit. Um, and so, but it's fairly immobile. So if the plants use up the potassium that are right around the roots, then they stall. They get received. The first thing happens is the hidden hunger. So everything's going great. They're putting on weight. They're filling in, then nothing. So it could be. That's my first culprit. Would be the potassium. Give them just a small amount of potassium, like a potassium sulfate, just a little bit. you know, on the roots, just enough to spark the carbohydrate metabolism. So they start to making the sugars again. Things start to fill in. They start to finish better, and they reach closer to their genetic potential. So potassium is the number one thing. Now, it could be something else too. It could be phosphorus that's locked up, but most of the ones that are really mobile in the soil, they're not going to be limiting. But things like phosphorus, potassium would be, but especially potassium. Plants will store up a lot of phosphorus to the end if they're getting more than what they need, and they'll be able to use that for their energy. But they need the potassium as a catalyst. That's important. Potassium isn't part of the tissue. That's a catalyst to activate enzymes to drive the entire process, including the uptake of water and nutrients.
So by a little bit of potassium, with this particular scenario, what we did, this customer has a Kelp4less product in his possession that we call Ripe Blend. And
Mm,
a Ripe Blend basically is is our Kelp4less formulation of 41838, and we add additional amino acids, fulvic acids, humic acids, and kelp, very small amounts, and we have him dosing that at a teaspoon per half gallon. And
mm.
and it's a soluble, basically it's a 41838 with biostimulants. And boy, after a couple days, I think you hit it on the nose that the high potassium in that
That's it.
38% potassium, which equals to kind of just a little bit what you were talking about, 1 teaspoon per half gallon, got that plant going again in just a couple days. So he's
Yeah,
going to continue that regimen as it's using water. We're going to go back to the 1 teaspoon per gallon regimen to help him finish up. So, and in between that, of course, we're dosing our organic CalMag as well. So in between the right blend, he's going in with a little bit of our organic CalMag and coming right back to the right blend. So seems to be working out good for him. Looks like he'll have a good harvest. He's happy again. The plants are functioning like he wants. And yeah, I think you hit it on the nose. The hidden
yeah,
hunger.
that blend was relatively high in potassium. That is, but the other things that it's not. I mean, I would say potassium is number one. When I look at PK boost, I always say, well, monopotassium phosphate. In hydroponics, plants don't need all that phosphorus at the end. At early on, though, oh yeah, earlier flowering, more flowering sites, get that energy flowing, energizing cellular metabolism. But then toward the end, I always look at the necessity of more potassium. So I have my mono potassium phosphate early. I have my potassium sulfate late to be able to keep that momentum going all the way to the end. Um, yeah, and but what you're saying too with the biostimulants, I like having that, like the kelp and the aminos, all the way to the end. I mean, yeah, it's
Yeah.
really important during rooting, really important for vegetative growth, for building new cells. But it's important at the end because you want the roots actively dividing and growing all the way to the day of harvest. So if the roots are starting to die back, they're not mining the nutrients. And if they don't, and if there's not enough nutrients in the root zone, you can have the hidden hunger. So either one. So if you're stimulating root growth and providing the nutrients they need, they're gonna they'll go as long as they can. And by the way, you're gonna feed the microbes, and then the microbes are gonna tell the plant, keep doing photosynthesis, keep making sugars all the way to the day of harvest through the volatile organic compounds that trigger the genetics in the plant. And that's at toward the end. That's another reason why I like to feed the microbes at the end too, because the plant, once it thinks it has enough carbohydrates, it stops leaking carbohydrates to the roots to feed the microbes. And once it hoards them in their flowers and in the fruit and in the seeds mainly. So but if you get the microbes going, like Bacillus subtilis GBO3, they'll make volatile compounds that turn off the sugar signal. The plant doesn't know it has enough stored carbohydrates, so it continues to do photosynthesis. It continues to plump up and sweeten up all the way to the day of harvest. So we got a few things going on there, but if you wanted to pick one thing, out of all it, I'd say it's probably a hidden hunger for potassium.
All right. Well said. Well, this is a pretty good informative lesson today. May help some viewers solve some of their late season problems. And again, give them some insight on preparing for next season or their next grow by setting yourself up for success. Setting
Hmm.
yourself up for success, very, very important. Well, this was a pretty good discussion. I'm glad to see you back from your camping trip,
Hmm.
and I hope some more vacations are in your future.
Oh yeah, after this one, I'm going back as soon as I can. I'm
Good.
retired, so it seems like I could go whenever I want, but it a lot of times doesn't work out that way. But yeah, okay. Well, thank you for that. Got some
Yeah,
fresh air.
you look great. Yeah, I mean you look totally relaxed today too. I mean you're just yeah, I can tell you've had some recreation.
Yeah, but I'm drinking more coffee today because it's I need a vacation from my vacation. Hmm.
Gotcha, gotcha. And
Okay.
well, until next week, I'm the organic mechanic. This is Harley Smith, and I will send you an email that I owe you here this week as well. You'll be getting an email
Oh,
from me.
okay.
All
All right.
right.
I look forward to hearing from you, and I'll see you next week. Have a good one.
Okay. You too. Thanks, Harley.
Bye.
Bye bye.